instead of talking about toxic masculinity, let's talk about toxic behavior and attitudes in general. So the reason people talk about toxic masculinity and how it's whipped up is that there's a toxic area, and a big toxic area within the males of our country that are causing really bad attitudes towards women, and therefore breaking down cohesion, any kind of bonds that we have, and normal interactions, normal manners, politeness, and what we all really want, love. So the point about this is normally that should be backed up by stats. So if we're going to talk about toxic masculinity, then it should mean that the males in our country have a far worse view of women than women do of men. So what we need to do is look at the stats, because the only way we can understand and see if this is right, that people are saying that this is the area that we should be focusing on, as we hear loads of news, there's films about it, there's initiatives, then we should say, well, yeah, there seems to be a problem in that area, which is bigger than the other way around. So do men really have a worse view of women than women have of men? So the stats are out in a new study. I'll release the men's first. So with men under 30, 7% of them have an unfavourable view of women. So I'm going to make sure I've got the stats right, but 7% of men have an unfavourable view of women under 30. So that's 7%, so that's 1 in 14. So if you look around, 1 in 14 30-year-olds statistically have an unfavourable view of women. In that same category, 72% of those men have a favourable view of women. So nearly 3/4, so that means 3 out of 4, or 3 out of 4 men under 30 you see have a favourable view of women. So how do we know if this is a big problem? Is 7% of under 30s that have an unfavourable view of women, is that a large problem, or is it a small problem? So we have to compare it to the other way. Now I think that 7% of men having an unfavourable view of women should be a bit lower. But let's compare it to the women in the same age group. For women under 30, the percentage of who have an unfavourable view is 21%. So that's 3 times the amount of women. So 1 in 5 women, over 1 in 5 women who are under 30 have an unfavourable view of men. 1 in 5. So instead of 1 in 14 for men, we've got 1 in 5. So a fifth. Now, how many have a favourable view of men? Around 50%. So 1 in 2 women, before it was 3 in 4, or so now only 2 in 4 women. So half of the women that you see, only half of the women under 30 have a favourable view of men, where it was 3 out of 4 for men. And when you take that to a very positive view of men, that number goes down to 11%. So only 11% of women under 30 have a very favourable view of men. So if anyone looks at this and statistically looks at the areas which should be given attention, there seems to be a way bigger effect happening on the woman's side than the men's side. So all this talk about toxic masculinity, when we should really be treating women who say men are horrible creatures and you should stay away from them, in exactly the same light as the men who say women are horrible and they should have zero respect. They are just exactly the same people. The fact that they don't have the same reaction, that's where the hypocrisy lies.